Jenny, welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to have you back.
Thanks, Sonia. It's great to see you and talk to you.
I know. I've known you forever. Like when I first started mountain bike racing, I think it was like 2003 or 2004, and I think 2005 was my first year as a pro, and like going to the Northern Nationals and seeing this like Jenny Smith out there kicking everybody's butt. Like it was just so like I was like so inspired by you. And just over the years, it's been a long time we've known each other and raced together, race, in far off places. You were one of the first people I knew to have children in mountain biking and continue racing. Like, just there's so many different ways you've impacted me. So I'm just really grateful to be sitting here having some time with you.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I reached out to you recently because I was like, Jenny, I am waking up at night with hot flashes. Like, this is crazy. Oh my gosh. And I've been learning all this stuff all of a sudden, like reading, Stacy Sims' book, Next Level. But I just wanted to learn more about like aging as an athlete. And you were the first person that came to mind. And there were so many great things that you already have told me about. And I thought, I can't be the only one craving this information. So let's record a podcast so we can get this out there.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I do want to preface that I'm by no means an expert, but I do think that we come from a common place that would have some really good discussion.
Well, you are an expert because you're a coach. Like you work with lots of different people. You have your own experiences. Like you might not be a researcher, but you are still an expert in your own domain. So, like, the first question I have is, I heard once you are in this perimenopause state, and maybe you can, like, we can talk about what that means to be in perimenopause. Like, you need to change your training. You need to emphasize strength work. You need to reduce your kind of like zone two, like longer rides and runs. Like, what did you do, and like, how do you counsel your athletes on how to start shifting their training goals?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. Like, I would say that, I'm 52, nearly 53. So when you're asking what I do or what I do with my athletes, it's definitely continuing to evolve. And I do think it's fair to say that there's a whole lot more research and information available now than there was, you know, 10 years ago
Yeah.
when I was 42. So I sort of want to recognize that.
Yeah, so I had reached out to you and I said, like, okay, I'm supposed to make lifting heavy weights. Like, I've been doing powerlifting, but like lifting heavy weights, like the big rock, the most important task, because it helps preserve, metabolic processes, bone health, management of stress hormones. So I had to look at my training and say, well, my for 20 years I've been almost exclusively emphasizing endurance training. Now I need to integrate all these strength training and make this like a top priority. And it has to come at the expense of my aerobic training because I don't have time to do everything. So I was like, huh, how do you do that? Like, how do you maintain your fitness and adaptations as an endurance athlete whenever you have to be prioritizing heavy weight training?
Yeah, and I don't think you necessarily have to prioritize heavyweight training. Like, I do think that regardless of our age, we really just want to look at where we're at and what our strengths and weaknesses are and lean into those things in kind of two ways, Sonia. Like, one being the sport that I'm doing and what can I do for performance in my sport, or as an athlete in general. And then on the other side of that, it's like, what do I need to do to maintain health for now and long-term health? And if you bring those two together, then it can be a bit less complicated than that. Because, yes, we do want to be strong, fit athletes, and if we just take that to to a basic level, like I like to say to people, I think to myself, like, our chassis needs to be strong. We don't want to be limited by whatever it is, whatever our chassis is that we want to use in our sport. But that I don't think that means just lifting heavy weights. And I do know that we get credit for our ability to do our sport too. And specifically with regard to that, you know, it's one thing to lift to do strength work, but we also do strength work, whether we're doing strength work on we're coming at this as cyclists or runners or, hikers or swimmers or whatever. Like the sport and activities that we do have a strength component, and that we want to marry that into our overall load as well.
Yeah, I think like my question 2 questions with that is like and I would love to hear your like opinions because like you've done a lot more reading than I have in these topics. So like with the strength training stuff, it's like you're supposed to be doing like 5 reps, like low reps, heavier weight, even if you're building your chassis. Whereas like for myself, like in the past, I'd be like, okay, I'm doing like high reps. And that actually like I think increases your cortisol or doesn't accomplish what you need to accomplish as you're like aging. So, has that changed for you? Because strength, yes, we should be strength training, and I will call myself out and say I've done a terrible job of that my entire like bike racing life. But like how that evolves over time, like how have you, if at all, like evolved that?
Yeah, and I do need to admit that me personally, I don't love strength training. Like I would
Yeah.
much rather just go and do the activities that I want to do. I like riding and running and swimming and skiing and,
hmm
hiking and all of the things other than strength training. So it's not a passion. If it was, I probably would be a different type of athlete. But how's it about but yes, I do recognize that it is something for long-term health, certainly. And I would go as far as to say that have benefited I would have benefited from when I first had children to I had a little online conversation recently with someone who's recently had a child, and I would have really benefited. I had my daughter at 40, and had I like leaned into strength training at that time, I think I would have had an easier time in the next few years with my athletics. And then just in my timeline, my daughter at 40 kind of led into, a 5-year-old at 45, and so forth into perimenopause and towards menopause. So the sooner that, we pick up some kind of strength routine and make it a part of our lifestyle, I think the better, Sonia. And, in your case, you're doing a really great job of that at your age, because in 10 years' time, you have 10 years under your belt and your strength will have greatly growing from where it is now. Yeah, that I don't know that I've answered your question. I think, the sooner you pick something up and start doing it, the better. And then, continue to grow into what you might look like as an athlete with strength. But I don't think we need to be intimidated by what we have to do. I do think that anything is better than nothing. And I do not necessarily. There is a place for higher reps and lower weight, and a place for higher weight and lower reps. I mean, you never want to just jump into something. You always want to approach your training as training, right? And build up your body's ability to do something and then extend on that. So there's always going to be a process towards lifting heavy. And I am conservative with myself, possibly a little bit too conservative. I'm conservative with my athletes too, because we don't want to get hurt doing what we're doing. We want to stress our bodies in the right way, um, in order to, you know, maintain and progress. But we don't want to jump in and get injured in the gym either. I just think we want to be cognizant and, you know, slow and steady kind of wins the race there
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
long term. Yeah.
I think you raised something very important that everybody listening can probably relate with is like I would hazard to guess that most people listening to this podcast are not like hardcore like, power lifter, Olympic weightlifter, like CrossFitter people, and we would rather be doing something else. Like, you said it, I feel exactly the same way. Like on one hand, I know it's very important for my longevity and my health. And on the other hand, I would rather be outside, like running, right, like whatever the case may be. So I think normalizing that is really important. Number two, something that even just in this, however long we've been talking, 10 minutes, like whenever somebody is, like, looking at all this information, all the things I need to be doing, it's easy to get locked into this almost like, I need to do it perfectly. I need to have everything be exactly right, otherwise bad things will happen to me. And so you kind of offered, like, a middle ground there. Like, it doesn't have to be, like, exactly what is prescribed, and to meet yourself where you're at, to do something instead of nothing, and to support your sport instead of trying to go all in on everything.
Yeah, I agree. I had a knee surgery at the end of 2024. I had a torn meniscus, and when I was going to PT after that, I have this amazing physical therapist in Gunnison. His name's Michael Kugler, and he's like incredibly educated, incredible person and athlete. And he even said to me, like, you don't have to do your PT. After a little bit, he was like, you don't have to do your PT every day. As I'm asking him what I need to do. And
Yeah.
he was like, he was basically, these are my words, but he was like, you do get brownie points for biking and skiing and stuff. And it was just such a relief to be like, oh, like I thought now that I'd had this injured knee and I'm coming back that I needed this super aggressive approach. And every day I was doing, whatever it might be, but, a strength routine. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, I don't have to do that. Like you do, I do gain strength from these other activities as well.
I also wanted to ask you, like, have you changed the amount of recovery time? Because, like, the typical, like, periodization training is like you train for 6 days and you have a day off. Like, I think that doesn't always apply. How has that changed for you, if at all, when you were changing up your training?
Oh, it's changed massively. Like, and I see it in athletes I coach too. But, I have a lot more recovery with things for sure. And currently I coach myself. And so I'll go in every couple of months and write this pretty program and training things just because then I like to have the workouts uploaded when I
Mhm,
need to use them. And I probably do half of them
mhm,
and, in truth, and particularly with the bike, I do other things. I swim 3 times a week. We have a swim group, and I've been bringing running back, like,
mhm.
past the knee, post-knee surgery and stuff. So it's really the bike workouts that are structured, and, I probably do half the workouts that I give myself. But with, my workouts, I really just, like, don't have junk in there. And I'm not afraid to know, which I do think is really important, Sonia. Like, as we're aging, we're gaining experience, right? And so if we really listen, we know what we need. And so even today, I rode the bike today and I was like, okay, I did strength work on Tuesday and I did some sprints on the trainer. And then on Wednesday, I joined Western cycling team for a Sufferfest indoor session. Yesterday, I just jogged for half an hour. And
Mhm,
today, I thought that I would want to do like a tempo sweet spot type work, and there was just no way. So when I rode the trainer today, I did a zone 2 workout with an 8 second 10-second sprint every 5 minutes. So I already adjusted it. I was like, okay, I just know that I'm not going to do the quality of work that I'd written in my calendar
mhm.
6 weeks ago. So I'll just do it tomorrow. Like, that I want some activity. I'm adapted to riding my bike. Let's just go and do that. And as I went, I kind of felt better and better as I was, was going and probably had it was zone 2, which we can chat about a bit, but it, for me to do zone 2, like it's work for me
Mhm.
to do zone 2, to marry my heart rate and my watts. And it was probably better than if I tried to do zone 3. I would have gotten bogged down and not been able to get my heart rate high. So that's a long answer there, but just have days in and put days in and don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid either to just know what you need to do. Like you know what you would need to do if you're tired one day, and it will be better tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things here. Like, number 1, recognizing that you may need more, recovery or less intensity depending on what your life inputs are, because those can change over time. And number 2, there's kind of like a deeper thing where, like, I think people if you've been training for a really long time, you'll objectify yourself based on the number of hours or miles that you're training, and like the online platforms, will naturally make you do this too, is like, "Oh, how many hours are you training? How many hours is everybody else training?" And then people will force themselves to do more, or there's a mindset of like, I just have to keep hustling. So people ignore what their body is telling them, or they think, well, I used to train 6 days a week, so I have to keep training 6 days a week. And they're not able to have the flexibility. Like what you said is like, well, I need to alter this, but some people will not alter it. They'll just keep going because that's what they've always done before. I'm sure that you've seen this with some of your athletes where they're like, "Well, the shoulds. I should be doing more than this. I should be able to do more than this." So, like, how do you talk to your athletes when they're like getting frustrated when they feel like they should be able to do more, they should be more recovered, etc.
Yeah, and I do usually encourage them. Like, I would say that we're having a discussion about perimenopause and menopause, right? So we can assume that we're talking to women.
Uh-huh.
I honestly, I don't coach. I have a number of female athletes, and none of them are lazy. Like, I
Mhm.
don't I just they just don't exist. Like, I don't coach any females. I would have to sit down and think about a female that I've ever coached. It's a blanket statement, but that doesn't want to work really hard.
Mhm.
And it might sound like pointing fingers, but I have coached men where I'm like, "Why are you hiring me? Like, please do what I tell you to do." Like, 'cause you're not paying me just to tell you off for not doing your workouts. But that's not a it's just not something that I see in cycling and triathlon coaching. It's a fair statement, Sonia. Like, every female that I coach wants to do more or adequate or
Hmm.
wants to know how to do whatever they're doing better. So I probably hold like a bunch of all of my females back, and or if they can't do things, that's my job as a coach to explain why or give grace or say that, I kind of saw that, and I sort of like wanted to see if you were capable of that, but we weren't quite sure, or just there's a reassurance sort of aspect that it's not for lack of wanting, it's more that we're just wanting to learn to do things that
Mhm.
different.
So just like, yeah, like recognizing you might be pressuring yourself to do more.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
or
I think having someone to talk to helps about that too, cuz like otherwise you
yeah,
get in your head.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. I think we could. Yeah, I can think we can fairly say that we all want to do more.
Mhm.
Feel good doing it, and yeah.
Can you tell us about I mean, you and I have both probably experienced this. I know I certainly have many times. The consequences of ignoring it and pushing through whenever your body is actually saying, "Hey, like when you feel that underwater feeling, like maybe my nervous system is like a little bit like tweaked off today, or like maybe I can't get my heart rate up. I'm tired," and you push through. Like, what are the consequences? Because I think having a balanced perspective of what is the consequence if I keep pushing through this is helpful, because that might help you create some space from the thoughts that you're having.
Yeah, for sure. And, I would hope that for most of us as we are getting older, there's less of that pushing through. Like, and, I see, with my athletes, it's often the younger ones, and, by younger, I'll sort of say under 30, that really are learning what their boundaries are and what it might look like to overstep the mark there. And those consequences can be anything from not sleeping to injuries, finding your limits with injuries, especially if that's less of a bike thing, but more of something you'll see in the gym or if you're a multi-sport athlete, to hormones where, just getting to be much better about checking our blood work nowadays,
Mhm.
to deficiencies in places, yeah, sleep, stress, sickness, all the all the usual markers there.
Mhm.
I do think that older athletes get just better at recognizing where they can push and where they can't. Usually often we'll have more responsibilities or We just will have known from the past what crossing that line is like and pull ourselves back quicker from it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
that's an
true.
advantage. Yeah, it's an advantage of getting older. It's not a disadvantage. It's just that you kind of learn what you can handle, when and how, and what's gonna not work out so well.
There's this book, I've mentioned it several times because I love it. It's called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks, and he talks about, like, the our how our intelligence style changes as we get older. So, whenever he talks about whenever you're older, you have more crystallized intelligence, which is basically more wisdom, more perspective, more ability to look at all the different pieces and make decisions. And I find that in racing as well. Like, I'm not I don't think I'm as fit as it's hard to say. I don't train nearly as much as I used to. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not as fit, but my training is just like not like half of what it used to be. And yet I could still go to races and do really well, even though I knew that those some of the other women were faster than me. I could watch them ride uphill faster, but the decisions I made, you know, not only in the race, but around the race, before the race, like all those decisions based on experience would allow me to perform better than somebody who is actually objectively faster than me. So like this wisdom, I think, is a really important thing to tap into.
Yeah, I agree. Or having the ability to rise to the occasion.
Mhm.
Like, you might not be able to repeat that performance as many times, but if you've put down what it is that you want to do on a given time, then you do have a skill set you can bring to that and do it on that day.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, something we kind of talked about before we recorded was goal setting. Goal setting as a like an aging, say female. I want to keep this in the female category. Aging
Mm.
female athlete. Like, what is your approach to goal setting?
Oh, that's a good question. um, well, I laughed at that and said it was a good question because I was trying to think about how I could say to be realistic with goal setting. And by that I mean across the board. Like,
Hmm.
whether you're a young mother and you're looking at what you want to do this year. Well, what does that mean for you? That means a whole lot more than if you're even someone of the same age who isn't a
Hmm.
mother. And so um, I think it's really important to, like, set your goals and know that you can, or learn how you can execute them with all the things that might be involved for you. Yeah, that would be my thing there. I don't know if that was a little bit out there,
Well,
but I
well,
was just, yeah.
let's do an
If we
example of
pick that
that.
apart a little
Yeah.
bit, well, I'll use an example, and actually, I will use an example, and it's one that both of us could relate to. Like, say you wanted to do the Breck Epic as your main goal for the year. And say you and I were meeting and we were discussing you racing the Breck Epic, then, my questions for you would be like, okay, you're going to do this race, and we're assuming that that's important to you and it's your A race. Then what do we need in order for you to be successful at that race, Sonia? Like, what do we need physically for you to do throughout the year? And that's kind of the easy part. Like, what training would you do? What kind of races do you have available to you that could lend you or lead you towards being able to do this as your A race? And then also, like, what is it going to take to get you to that race to be able to do a 6-day stage race? And the considerations for you doing that would be really different to even me, or certainly someone who doesn't have a family. Like, how can you go and what would it look like for you to go to that event? Would you be taking your family? Would you have support? What would your recovery look like? What would your
What
planning
recovery?
for food look like? Like that. Yeah, I think that's a really great example. Like, what are the finances involved in you going to do that event? Like, these kind of the big hard questions that we want to address in setting up a successful goal for ourselves or a successful season. And those things are really individual. Like, no one is here to say, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that. But I think that the bigger picture you can bring towards your goals that's just an inevitable part of getting older. We can't just go and wing it. It's not going to be successful for probably most people listening to this podcast. We'd be pretty unlikely to say, you know, let's go and do 24 hours at Old Pueblo in 2 weeks' time, and we'll just drive down there and meet down there and do it. Like that's not the, you know, yeah,
I'm laughing because my husband Matt, historically would always wing it. Like we did the Pioneer in New Zealand and he just like winged it. Like lots of races he would just wing it and it would almost destroy him. And lately he says, "Oh, like I can't just do that anymore." So it's like finally there's there's some awareness around that, which is actually really funny. But yeah, like there's a lot that goes into it. Another thing that I was thinking about is, sometimes the idea of something is very exciting, but the actual putting it together, like what you said, is not. So like for me, I'll give an example. It was like a year or two ago. Like my personality is like I like something and I want to go all in on it. Like I just get like hooked and I want to go all in. So it's like start running. I'm like, okay, I got to do these 100-mile running races. Like this is gonna be awesome. But then I paused and I said, like, well, what does that actually mean? Like, yeah, I'm thinking about the race day and how fun, but it's like, what is the daily practice of that? What is the daily trade-offs that have to be made? And then I realized, while I could do that, I don't want to do that.
right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that is something that we all face as we get, as we get older too. Yeah. Or you go and because I'm the same, I get very romantic about things and I just want to do them and then I'll get in it and I'll be like, I haven't done the work for this. I remember
Yeah.
one year I did Leadville 100 and it was actually the last year I did it. Um, I've done, raced that 5 times. And the last year that I did it, just my circumstances were so different. And it was, I don't think I've told you the story. It was the only time I've ever looked at splits. It was I had a specific time goal I wanted to do. Um, yeah, I didn't do anything well. I didn't execute it well at all. And when I finished the event, I was crying
Oh,
about it. And Brian was like, "Hey, you're not allowed to cry over this stupid race. We're not going to do it again if you're crying." And then, later that day or the next day, he was like, "You didn't do the work to do that."
yeah.
Like you didn't, and he didn't mean that like bad me. I didn't do the work. He meant it like you did not have the lifestyle to be able to support doing the work to do that race. Like, what were you thinking? And once I stepped away, I was like, yeah, you're totally right. Like, I didn't have the capacity to properly train for 100 miles this year. And so the following year, I didn't do any 100 miles. I just did 50 and 60 miles instead. So yeah, yeah. That is, yeah. And it's not to say that we don't want to have fun. We totally want to have fun. But, with goal setting, I think just set ourselves up for success and be really realistic about what we want to do and what we can and can't do. And if we find that like happy place where what we are doing is extending us, but it's not overwhelming us, then that's where we're going to succeed. And that's, yeah, but my athletes that, succeed in races, like my older athletes, they probably just pick a few races a year,
Hmm.
whether whatever level that they're racing at. I think, we don't have the capacity to do them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when the Lifetime series first came out, I was like, gosh, if I was in my 30s, I would love that race. Like,
Hmm.
in its early, or that series in its early iteration. And I'm like, nowadays, oh my God, like that gives me a headache just thinking about
Yeah. It looks
anything to do
awful.
with that
Yeah.
series. It looks horrible. Thank God there's no drop bars on my mountain bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just evolution. That's not right or wrong. There's no
Yeah.
right or wrong. There's no, absolutely not. Like it's just evolution of sport but we're all allowed to do sport. There's there's not an age limit on what we can and can't do. It's just like we want to lean into and embrace what we're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've been kind of dancing around this topic as well, is like the expectations of yourself. So like we talked about all the things it takes to get to the race or all the inputs, the energy to, sign up and train for and set the goal. But there's also the expectation. So you're at the race. Say you've been racing. I mean, how long have you been racing, Jenny?
Um, like racing, I
Yeah,
started running at 13. I was a
yeah,
runner
your
before I
whole
was a
life,
biker.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
40
me too.
years.
And so yeah, so it's like over the years, your expectations when you're lining up, maybe I don't know for you, but my like what I'm thinking about on the start line is really different than what it used to be. And also my expectations of where I'm gonna end up, like, sometimes I surprise myself, but, like, I don't know. I d As you age, do you need to change your expectations of where you think you should be, like, the should word, but, like, you know, normally it's like if you race a lot, you're like, "Okay, normally I'm finishing in the top 5, that's just, like, normal for me," versus, like, "Okay, maybe I'm not racing as much or I'm a bit older, I'm not training as much," or whatever the reason, maybe I need to shift my expectations to be, like, mid-pack, like, have you had to go through that sort of like, you're still racing at a really high level, but, like, in your experience and with your athletes, like, has there been, like, a shift of expectations and a mindset that people have had to adopt?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, you do. And, one, um, this is something you said to me prior to setting up the podcast that really I was like, yeah, that's a really interesting point. And we can use it here with expectations, but I think it also um it will be good to talk about in a menopause perimenopause, menopause context too. And it's that idea of being afraid of what's to come. And
Mm,
so I do think I've gone through that with my racing for certain, where it was like, well, I just won't talk about the fact that I'm older than everybody because, like maybe one day this will stop. And that's kind of scary, right? Like
mhm,
when I was in my early 40s, it was like, well, when am I gonna not be as fast or this, that, and um that other. But I do think that hindsight's always 2020. I do think that it has naturally unfolded in a way that I could have saved myself a whole lot of worry, and or misguided expectations if I could have just sort of let go of the process to begin with, which is always easier to
mm.
say that after than it is before. So, in an ideal situation, yeah, no, we don't worry about expectations. We just go and do our best, right? Like, but
Mhm.
that's not the reality. It- yeah, at all. I think it's just more an unfolding of like, cool, performance and outcome or whatever that might be.
Yeah, like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think I had said to you, like, "Oh, I'm scared of all these things." Like, there's all like, whenever you look and read about perimenopause or menopause, it's kinda actually, a similar example would be, like, to when you're gonna have a kid. Like, there's all these horror
Totally.
stories of
Yeah.
all these horrible things and how your life is gonna be ruined and how, all these things that just scare you and it's if like for kids, it's like some people get to choose whether they have kids. But if you're a woman, like, you don't get to choose whether you are going to go through this process of perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause. It's just inevitable as long as you're still living.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, I like what you said about, like, kinda letting go a little bit and not being afraid of it. I'd love to hear, like, just more I don't know if you can give practical advice, like, say you're just talking to me and I'm saying, "Jenny, like, I'm really scared about this, like, I don't even know what to expect or how my life is gonna change or how I'm going to feel or my body composition or, like, my mood," like, all this stuff. Like, how would you calm me down?
Well, I mean, um, I think that, well, one, I would encourage you to lean into the things that you know are good for you. So I would encourage you to lean into strength training. It doesn't need to be the only thing you do, but yeah, start it and continue it. Maybe twice a week's good, you know? And then I would encourage you and everybody, who has the means to like definitely lean into our medical growth of knowledge. Like in the last few years in Gunnison, we've had like leaps and bounds with what's available. We have an annual health fair here, and the women's hormones have gone onto that panel that you can do at low cost. And I think that maybe started in 2020, and then it's become more complete doing that in the last like several years. So that's like a really big advancement. I'd encourage everyone to do that. I think I did that like I could have saved myself a lot of bother starting that a lot earlier. And I would lean into some of the information that's available and lean into your doctors too. Like again, in Gunnison, we now have a women's clinic that's run by two female doctors, and I go there to get my annual checkup. And so my process in the past 3 years with that clinic being open is to get my blood work done and then schedule my annual. And through that is kind of like my yearly checkup with my markers, things that I don't understand. Like at this last visit, my doctor said, oh, yeah, like your menopause markers are going up as we would expect. And, I would never have known that if she wasn't there. So I think that whole area can just feel really scary. But if you've got support and guidance with what you're doing, I actually don't think it's that complicated. There's hormone replacement therapy available. And I could certainly have started that, I think, when I was like mid 40s, yet I started that when I was 51. Because I still got my period. I just didn't know that I'd been in perimenopause for a long time. So it's really just like, rather than shelving it as something that's scary, it's like, okay, well, let's actually just like open the door to this. And it's not that complicated. And maybe, I can only speak from my own experience. Like it doesn't have to be a horror thing, or some of the symptoms can be really easily alleviated with some medical advice and help. And on the flip side of that, I've definitely worked with women who've had some real problems, and untangling those problems later has been hard for those
Mm,
females. And just where I fall in that kind of age bracket, like the couple I'm thinking of are older than me. So I've had more information and access to help than they did, 5 or 10 years earlier, because that's just the way we're in a good time right now with research and yeah, you know, things available.
Yeah, I think something that I've recently learned is that, like, I used to think, oh, hormone replacement therapy is horrible. Like, it gives you cancer, it's bad for you.
Right.
And like, I can't remember the name of the study, but apparently there was some study that said all those
Yes,
things, and it was
there
based
was.
on something that was untrue. And like, all of that become debunked. And I've listened to varying opinions that, like, I say listen 'cause listening on podcasts, saying like, yeah, like this is actually something to lean into. And, you know, for most people, this is not a dangerous thing to do. And in fact, it can help you sleep better. It can help you, prevent all of these unwanted outcomes with very little risk. So that's where like leaning into your medical team can be really beneficial. And again, that I just wasn't even aware of that until maybe like 2 months ago.
Yeah, 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 same, until a few years ago. Like I said, I was kind of late to the party really, because I had my period regularly, but for a number of years, I've known that I had low progesterone. And I didn't know until like 2 years ago that low progesterone can be because of non-ovulatory cycles. And so you can have your period but not ovulate. And I just didn't know that. So I really do think that, just given my history with low progesterone, um,
Mhm.
that's when I kind of say, like, I really could have started some support 5 years earlier. But yeah, we just learn as we go.
And I think these conversations are important. That's like a main reason I wanted you to come on the podcast, because I feel like this type of discussion is still not a normal discussion that women in middle age have. Like, it used to be how, like, oh, don't ever talk about your period. Like, don't ever, like, just pretend it doesn't even exist. And now I feel like it's more normal to talk about your period. But now I also feel like this discussion around perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, these conversations are just now barely starting to become normalized. Or even like with like the nighttime hot flashes thing, like I think people are ashamed of getting older because our culture is like,
Yes.
no, like don't
Yeah.
get older. And I went to a couple of my friends who are about my age, and I'm like, ugh, like I wake up with these like hot flashes. This sucks. And they're like, oh yeah, like I've been having that for a really long time. And like I had no idea because nobody talks about it. And these are really big changes and things that happen, and it's better if we like if we have community around these types of things and be able to talk about them, because that's how people know about resources and like how you might need to, adapt how you move forward in your life.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
With
Yeah.
a few minutes we have left, like, is there where would you like to go next? I think we can pick like
Oh,
one more
I'm
topic.
easy. Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's see. How about talking about like stress and inflammation, because that's another thing that we hear, like, oh, like, this is really dangerous and really bad.
Yeah, totally. It's funny because when I made notes before our conversation, I wrote down inflammation. Well, um, just to bounce back from that, with hormone replacement, I really needed estrogen. And when I started using an estrogen patch, my entire body relaxed. It was like
Wow.
I was so hungry for this. This was huge. And in my 40s, I very much suffered from horrible anxiety. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, I did. From really like the time I had Jade at 40 through to having an estrogen patch when I was 51. And in perimenopause, I'm bouncing, Sonia, I apologize, but I think
That's
it's a
all
good thing
good.
to talk about. In perimenopause, when our estrogen wildly fluctuates, there's a lot of instability that is caused because of that. And one of the things that you see as being prevalent is mental health. And it's not mental health as in, it's mental health because of the fluctuations in estrogen. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring up. I think that a lot of us could be saved a lot of anxiety or a lot of, fairly normal mental health things by just understanding and knowing that this can be hormonal and that some hormone replacement can help significantly. And then the reason I thought about estrogen is because the fluctuating estrogen is also tied to inflammation. And so I
Mm.
do believe that in perimenopause, we can be more susceptible to, I'll say, inflammatory responses. And that can be manifested anywhere. And particularly, I think we are pushing the boundaries with that with as athletes, with gut health, with joint and tendon health. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
So,
sharing that.
yeah, so I would say, like, yes, be aware of, privy to, and proactive in things that we can do to help mitigate inflammation or cortisol response or both, and don't ignore those things. But also we're not just going to treat things by behaviors. Like, again, I just think it's a really great idea to have blood panels and hormone panels as part of that.
Okay, so I'm going to think about our entire scope of our conversation. Like, number one, it sounds like agency, the acting on the thing that you think you need to do is really important. And being flexible in doing so. So like whenever you are signing up for an event, really trying to pay attention to what all the inputs are and the things that you might need, and managing your expectations. When it comes to your training, being like maybe it's like not agency, it's flexible. Being flexible, that maybe you need more recovery than you used to, or maybe you just need slightly different things with your training, and like that's okay. Being flexible to you know to get more medical support through these changes, and not to be ashamed of those things, and to let go a little bit, like you mentioned that, like the fear associated with aging, and also like the expectations of, and worry about like, what is my performance going to do, like just being more like being more flexible, being more adaptable, being more resilient. It sounds like that's kind of a thread through the whole
I think
conversation.
so. And just
Yeah.
lean into, well, really, it's like being proud. Like, be proud of who we are and embrace the experience that we have and carry that pride into what we do with action. And that's a cultural change in
Mm.
endurance sports because traditionally younger is better, and yet we're seeing again and again that it's not. And I mean, I don't even mean better by far, I'm not saying that we need to be better as in faster, but just like owning our place in life and celebrating what we can do. Like it's one thing to say age is just a number, but yeah, like it is. But I mean, what if it is a number? Like how
Mhm.
about we just say, well, age is a number, and it doesn't mean that we can be, yeah, I just think that there's a lot of growth that could be done if we just like carry pride and experience and expertise into our athletics.
I love that. Yeah, like I always tell people I'm 42. Like I tell people my age because that's something that women like, the older generation, the boomers, like they like, oh, like they pretend they're younger. They don't want to say their age because somehow your age, like if you're older, that means you're bad or like
Yeah. Oh,
I
totally. And traditionally it has. There's like
yeah,
ageism and things. And you're
yeah,
not saying that because you're saying, I'm 42 and I'm 26. Like you're
yeah.
saying that because you really are. Like I've known you for so long, Sonia. Like, look at who you are now compared to when you were 36. Like, that's something to be just enormously proud of.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
I love that. I love that mindset. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing
you're
your
welcome.
experience. I think it's really helpful for people to just hear what is I don't want to use the word normal, but just like a normal conversation look like around this. That's just like this is just part of life and we don't need to be afraid and we can lean into our friends and the support systems around us and we can ultimately be more flexible through connection.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Where
Sonia.
where can people find you, Jenny?
Oh, they can find me at um, Aim High Performance on Instagram and Jenny Smith Coaching. Yeah, that's it really. Our website's Aim High Perform, and just Google search for
Perfect. Well, thanks a
it.
lot.
Thanks, Sonia.